So I thought it'd be fun to do an unscripted recap of all of the books I finished reading in January, and I'll talk about each one briefly and do a short overview, but I have full reviews of each one of these books, and whatever platform you happen to be watching this on, I'm sure you know how to find the full review videos. The first book I finished in January is Last Days by Adam Nevill, and if you're not familiar with Adam Nevill, he is the writer of the book The Ritual, which Netflix has a movie of the same name, The Ritual, and it's actually one of my favorite horror movies, and if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend checking it out on Netflix. Last Days centers around two documentary filmmakers who were hired to investigate an old cult from the 70s. This book actually had one of the scariest scenes I've read in a book in a long time and did a really good job of making me feel trapped with the two characters in the situation that they were in at the time. Speaking of the two main protagonists, I thought they were written really well. You could really feel that they were two friends who've known each other a long time, but have also worked very closely on several projects throughout the years. And the way they went back and forth while dealing with the horrific situation they slowly discovered themselves to be in was really fun to read. The way the mystery of the cult was presented was really compelling. It made me want to keep pushing through the book just so I could find out what was actually going on. And of course, it's not just a regular cult. There's some demonic stuff, some sacrificial stuff, and it just gets really crazy, but I really enjoyed the ride. My only small complaint, and I mentioned this in the full review as well, is that in the climax of the book, it starts to move away from horror and leans more towards action horror, and it kind of reads more like a Resident Evil action set piece, which isn't a bad thing, and it didn't ruin the ending for me. I just thought the shift in tone was a little different, but I still enjoyed it, and I really liked this book. The second book I finished in January is Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica, who is an Argentine author. The premise of Tender is the Flesh is that there's a virus that basically makes all animal meat toxic for humans to eat, and so the government standardizes and legalizes cannibalism. So right off the bat, this book has some real body horror vibes. There's a group of humans, who are basically bred in captivity for the sole purpose of being slaughtered for meat. And we follow our protagonist in this book is Marcos, who is the manager, or he's the person in charge of one of the most reputable slaughterhouses in this system. And I think what really contributes to the horror is in the opening of the book and the first couple chapters, he very matter-of-factly walks us through the process and his workday. So he's explaining how humans are brought in, shipped into the slaughterhouse, how they're inspected, how they're prepared to be slaughtered, and then how they're actually butchered and shipped out to customers. Once we get a feel for the world, there is a overarching conflict that I thought was super interesting, and the more I sat with the ending, the more it really turned around my perspective, especially when it comes to Marcos. And, he didn't end up being who I thought he was supposed to be in the end, which I thought was really well written. This book is not for people who don't have a strong stomach because the descriptions are pretty detailed and, like I said, they're very matter-of-fact. So it's a very cold look at what the process of human slaughter for meat would look like. But overall, I really like this book, and if you can get over the body horror and the graphic descriptions, it was a really easy read and a pretty quick read too. And the third book I finished in January is Ghost Eaters by Clay McLeod Chapman. And this book was really interesting for me to read because it takes place in the city I live in, Richmond, Virginia. The basic story in Ghost Eaters is there is a drug called Ghost, and it's a pill that basically enables you to see the ghosts of your loved ones when you take it, when it gets you high. But it's also revealed to be incredibly addictive, and there's a whole other background of the drug that I won't spoil. The book taking place in Richmond, Virginia is also pretty important because if you don't know, Richmond, Virginia was the capital of the Confederacy during the U.S. Civil War, and the Confederacy, or the southern states of the United States at the time, was the side fighting to keep slavery legal. So, a drug enabling you to see ghosts with Richmond, Virginia as the backdrop. The book really plays with themes of white guilt and class inequality, but then it also has themes of addiction. Overall, I thought Ghost Eaters was a really fun read. It wasn't very scary, although there is kind of a spooky tone that carries throughout the whole book. And a tiny complaint I did have is that the main characters are a little annoying at times, but I think that was just kind of part of the overall narrative. I won't say too much more to avoid spoilers, but if you're interested in a book that tackles the complicated history of the US South and has themes of addiction, white guilt, class inequality, all through the use of drugs and seeing ghosts, then Ghost Eaters is definitely a book you should check out. So yeah, those are the 3 books I finished in January. If any of them seem interesting to you and you want to hear a little bit more in-depth reviews on them, then check out the other videos. But if you just want to go into them based on that, I also recommend doing that. And I thought they were all worth the read. So if you're looking for a new book, check out any one of these.